So welcome everyone. You are invited to this webinar. We're going to talk about international home buyers and how they are the untapped opportunity for builders, agents, and everyone. So welcome, hope you enjoy and learn a little bit of everything.
Thank you, Alejandra. And thank you to the entire NEO team, Christian and Tammy, Thomas, everyone, in terms of really pulling this together and enabling what we believe is a very important conversation, not one that we have probably as much as we should. So we're really excited today and really appreciate everyone showing up to participate in this dialogue. So I want to start with introducing our esteemed panelists. And I'll start with Kimberly, who probably doesn't need much introduction because she's kind of everywhere. But I will introduce her. She has been in the industry over 25 years, really working with executives in our industry and frontline sales teams to really maximize that sales engine. And it's been incredibly insightful spending time with her, gearing up for this panel. And this discussion, just the little insights that she truly brings to the table. So, welcome, Kimberly, to the webinar.
Thanks for having me.
And then Alejandro, who also goes by Alex, is the Director of Global Strategy at NAR. And we feel extremely fortunate to have him with us because while we tend to swim in the home building industry and we know all of these things, he really knows the international market and the international buyer. And he's all about partnerships and education and research to really understand the international market in real estate. So, Alex, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, we're going to warm up here a little bit because before we jump into our panel and our discussions, I think it's important to share a little bit about our panelists. So I will put them on the spot and ask them, what favorite book or podcast have you listened or read recently that you think is share worthy? Kimberly, go for it.
All right. Well, favorite book. I live in this book, and it's called Traction by Gino Wickman. So this is the tool that I use to work with my builders. A lot of people are familiar with the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System Mindset. So highly, highly recommend that. And I do a lot of implementer status for quite a few builders who are deploying that tactic. And then you asked about podcasts. So if we're talking about business podcasts, so particularly industry, it would be the digital marketing podcast. I think Kevin and Greg do a fantastic job getting us a wealth of people from across lots of different platforms. Mel Robbins is my go-to gal pal, like psychology, get your head on straight, tell it like it is. Love Mel Robbins. And then when I just want some fun, Smartless, which is Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett. It's hilarious. It's so funny. It's a good little like brain break for me after a stressful day of working with lots of people. So if I'm in my car or I'm on the treadmill, that's a good one to listen to.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we did not even rehearse this or talk about this, but I was going to throw in, I just listened to a Smartless podcast, an interview with Bill Gates, and really well done. Well, they are funny as heck, right? So, I mean, just
You
laughing.
learn
But
stuff and you're laughing. And sometimes I'm laughing till I'm
totally,
crying. So it's very well done.
totally. And this one was Bill Gates really talking about how at this stage in life and his philanthropic efforts and where he's spending his money and his reflections on technology and society. And it really spoke to me. So that's really ironic that we had that. All right. Well, Alex, share a little bit. What's your favorite uh, news or book or
So
podcast?
this is a tough question because I'm an avid reader and especially podcast listener. But if I had to pick a business related book, the last one that I read and I highly highly recommend it, that would be The One Thing. It's
Mm,
written by Gary Keller. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Gary Keller is one of the founders of the world renowned franchise Keller Williams. really does emphasize in the power
Mm.
of focus, not just for business, but for life in general. And I love how the book really strengthens the fact that if you want to succeed, you need to identify and concentrate your efforts in that one thing that makes everything else seems either much easier or even unnecessary. And sometimes, with so much stuff going on, I'm a big fan of just identifying which is that, again, one thing where I really need to concentrate my efforts, because otherwise you kind of dilute a little bit and lose your focus. So that one is a great book that I just read, more on the fun side of things. And as I've mentioned in the past in different conversations with you guys, I'm a big neat freak, whether it's in like business or personal settings. So I fairly recently, to my surprise, discovered this Marie Kondo, who's like apparently the absolute goddess of tidying up. So I read her book. It's called The Life Changing Magic Art of Tidying Up, and I really love the fact that well, not only it resonates with one of my passions, which is keeping things in order, decluttering, but actually finding joy while you're doing that, which a lot of people don't get that. But I'm now kind of like finding that sort of like thing that I always thought that, oh my God, this is, I don't know if this is a virtue or not, probably not. But now I'm starting to see like, oh, you know what? There's a silver lining to my craziness when it comes to tidying up. So that's the two books and podcasts. I'm a huge fan. Other than, I mean, I love soccer. I love sports in general. I listen to a lot of that. But when it comes to like business, I love the How I Built This series with Guy Raz. I love how he interviews all these founders that have super inspiring stories. uh, you know, how he covers the journeys from inception of an idea to the success, like very engaging storytelling. I love that one, and I'm a big fan of entrepreneurs in general, so that's very inspiring to read. Again, it's called How I Built This. Highly recommend.
Oh, love that. Love that. Well, we could talk about this all day, but we're not going to because we have to jump into our topic. But I will sneak in my new favorite book, Unreasonable, which if you watch the series The Bear, they reference, and it's all about unreasonable hospitality. And I think it made trump my other favorite one, which was Power of Moments. But anyway, well, let's dive into our topics. Thank you for sharing what's top of mind and what you all are reading and studying these days. So to get us kicked off, let's just start with a few fun facts, right? Things that, kind of why are we even paying attention in a way? And the first one I think is, it's $42 billion in revenue. And I say this because some of you are on your phone or you're checking your email, but I find when you say money to home builders, they tend to perk up and go, oh, well, maybe there is something worth listening to here. So it is a very, very large lucrative market, and none of us needs that much of a percentage of that to have a huge impact on our business. What I think is interesting is about 50% of international home sales are cash buyers, and we do tend to really like those cash buyers. And that's something I don't think that we always are cognizant of when we think about international buyers in the market. Another really interesting fact is we start to tease apart when we talk international market or international buyers, there's kind of an immediate assumption that these people are coming from their country of origin, and 57% of them are already in the US. We do consider them international, right? So they are coming at the market from a slightly different perspective, but that's a very interesting fact. And we're going to tease that apart a little bit later as to why that's important to understand. So I'm going to open up another question for our panelists and just, from each of y'all's perspective, why do builders care about the international market? So, Kimberly, we'll start with you first.
It's an easy one. You're giving me softballs today, Melissa. So because we need more sales. Right now, sales are hard to come by. We're having to work very hard for every one of them. And so any avenue to open up more sales should be something that salespeople and their leadership teams are excited about. So,
Mm.
be this fear that this is not something that we are equipped to do makes really no sense financially when you look at the impact that, as you were just sharing, that these buyers can have on our business. And once you've mastered it with one, you master it with many because the referrals just keep coming and they are great. So I'm like, why not?
Awesome. Yeah. All right. I wrote that down. We need more sales,
We
right?
need more sales.
That's a pretty clear message. All right. So, Alex, how about you from your perspective?
Well, I think the previous slide gave a huge hint of what I was going to give as my first reason. $42 billion only last year. If that's not, if that does not represent a huge multi-billion dollar opportunity, I don't know what does. So that is a huge, huge, huge reason. We know through our statistics and reports generated by the National Association of Realtors, particularly this one called the International Research Report on International Investment in U.S. Residential Real Estate, that international market is a very lucrative one. Again, we're just talking about last year alone, and I will say that that particular figure that you were showing is one of the lowest that we've seen since we started developing this research in 2009, but it's still a huge amount of money. So I don't think this can be any longer overlooked by builders, by developers. This segment has a huge, 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 huge business opportunity in there in that for them. And I also want to add to what Kimberly said, which I fully agree with, that with increasing global wealth, these economic shifts that we're all seeing, the geopolitics and everything, the demand for secure investments is growing, and I feel like US is a great place for new construction properties to be in high demand. It represents a safe investment in a way, and we'll talk more about that. But I feel like those are two very compelling reasons of why builders should definitely be keeping their eyes of what's going on outside of the US and these trends, because again, the inbound business that's coming into the US residential real estate market cannot be overlooked. It's a lot of money on the table, and builders can get a big part of that pie.
Awesome. Awesome. And I love it every time you say money. I think it's like, when dogs hear, go for a walk, it's like money. We really like money. And it can be blah, 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 money. So great. Those are some really important perspectives. And now we're going to dive into, we have kind of two sections of our presentation today, or our discussion today. One is really understanding the international market, and Alex is going to take us through that. Then we're going to switch into, okay, but as builders, what does this mean for us? And Kimberly's going to kind of lead us through a session of Mythbusters on, what are some of those things that we think are true, or we hold, as true, and kind of hold us back at times. And how do we put those in a frame, and how do we manage through those? So first off, we're going to turn it over to Alex, and he's going to just take us through a little bit closer look at understanding international buyers, because if you don't understand your buyers, you really can't sell them. And I think that's a quote from Kimberly. So we'll let Alex take it away here.
So thanks, Kimberly. First and foremost, I wanna preface this by saying that I'm fortunate enough as part of the National Association of Realtors global team. Leading that team gives me a very good and wide perspective on international buyers, because we have over 100 bilateral partners outside of the United States, covering 78 countries. And what I want to mean by that is that we are in very close connection to a lot of these different markets that are sending buyers into the US. And something that we are always asking ourselves, or something that we are digging deeper into as we go, is always like, what is fueling this international demand? Well, first and foremost, and sort of related to what I was speaking about earlier, is I think the investment and wealth diversification portion. I think it's very important to understand that a lot of these buyers, and I don't know, Melissa, Kimberly, if you guys have experienced that, but they come from very diverse cultural backgrounds. They come from, in many cases, what's countries that are politically very unstable. And this is something that oftentimes gets overlooked, but has a huge impact on the decisions of these buyers to come into the US. Because again, and I tend to say this a lot when I talk to different, stakeholders that we have within the US and outside, sometimes we get a little too caught up in the different issues and the different problems that we have here in the US. But a bad case scenario in the US when it comes to this industry is still much better than most of the best case scenarios outside of the US. So let's not take for granted what we have here, because it's a great place to do business, and international buyers do recognize that. So definitely investment and wealth diversification, big reason why international buyers are putting their eyes on this market. I feel like there is a big appetite, and we'll talk about myths and different things later, but there is a big appetite from what we see in this report and what we feel by chatting with all of our international realtor members, which we have over 8,000 in new developments, new construction. It's sort of like a long-term wealth preservation strategy for many of them, who again, they got the money. You just mentioned that, which is also mind-blowing, Melissa, that 50% of them are deciding to pay cash. Well, that's because they're moving some of their assets, some of their capital out of their countries. They want a safe haven in a way. They want stable markets. And again, geopolitics apart, which are important, the US is still a very good place for that. So I think that's a big reason. Again, I think that also by purchasing in different countries, they diversify their portfolio. A lot of them, not only individual clients, but many family offices are setting their eyes in the US. So there is a huge opportunity to tap into those markets that are now heavily focused on where to invest in the US. And I know that we're gonna be pretty mind blown of the opportunities that we find in places that are not the ones that probably most people are thinking right now. I feel like another thing that's very important, and it's highlighted there as the visa and residency programs, is there's a lot of interesting programs that many of the international buyers can access to. I'm gonna specifically call out the EB-5. I know there's more than that, but that one allows foreign nationals, and many of you might be familiar with this one, to obtain a US green card by making an investment in real estate. So it's definitely something that is not necessarily real estate, but this is why we have to be paying attention and taking into account the big picture, not just focusing on attracting buyers to sell them a home or to sell them some sort of like complex construction building, whatever, but let's see what are the different elements that play a role in bringing these guys here. And I'll tell you that the USA, just like several other countries, but this one is a very popular one because it grants you residence, which is, again, when it comes to getting residence, the US is one of the most sought after countries. It's a big reason why many of the international buyers are coming here, because that means more potential opportunities for their family members, a better living, after all. And then another thing that's kind of like here as a third point that I feel like needs to be talked about as well is the lifestyle and remote work trends. I think that, and particularly after the pandemic, and I'm not discovering anything, I'm not giving any sort of like reason that most people aren't familiar with, but like a lot of these individuals are seeking second homes. They are seeking second homes, vacation properties. The amount of relocation options has opened up more than it has before. So it's pretty wild how that is playing a big role in attracting international buyers. Again, going back to the proper builder related conversation, a lot of them are seeking for new construction, those new wonderful amenities. There is a big focus on sustainability, which is huge as well. And a lot of these new buildings, well, they come with like energy efficiency systems, things like that, that are making big waves and have been making big waves in other regions, particularly I will say in Europe and Asia Pacific. So those buyers are very focused on that. They are comfortable with that type of purchase. And I think, again, with the best and the worst, the lifestyle benefits that come with a purchase here in the US are really big, are really great, especially as the remote work trend continues. I feel like that is a big perk that a lot of us can tap into as a great value add for having another great benefit for those international buyers to come to the US. You mentioned here, and I love to see that there, because this is probably the 1-2 number in terms of like the things that get overlooked, like student housing, global job assignments, vacation. Like, the reasons why they're coming here are multiple. So it's not
And
just
I think, yeah, and Alex, I think that's a really good point that I want to kind of punch a little bit, in that sometimes when we think international buyers, that it's strictly money related, financial investment, which, sometimes we're kind of making communities, and there certainly is some of that. But I love this slide in that it really breaks down lots of different motivations for coming into the US, or kind of this international buyer mindset. The one that's interesting, explain resi-mercial.
Yeah, so as part of the composition of our membership, we are a 1.5 million membership organization. It's one of the largest trade associations in the Americas, I will say. We have about 80%, 85% of our members mostly identify themselves as we just do residential. Then we have a percentage of them, around like 10%-ish, that are commercial members. But then resi-mercial is the fun way in which we define those members of our association, mostly agents and brokers, that identify themselves as doing both. Something that's very important to understand when it comes to international markets, and this is why I'm emphasizing this, is the difference between I do commercial and I do residential that we have in the US. That does not exist. And I want to highlight that does not exist outside of the US. There might be a few countries where there's people really specialized in that. But for the most part, within our realm, real estate, people do whatever they get. You get an office, you'll figure that out. You get a residential building, you get some units, you'll figure it out. But the level of specialization that we have in this country is not very common to find outside of the United States. And one thing that I wanted to specifically mention, Melissa, because you've mentioned that earlier, and I love to hear that, is that, and this I hope all the people in the audience understand what I'm saying, but it's when it comes to global buyers, when it comes to identifying who those are, we tend to just look outside of our borders and be like, oh, I gotta tap into those Brazilians, Mexicans, Canadians, whatever they might be coming from. Well, there is a big percentage of what we consider, as Melissa, you were mentioning, international buyers that are already here. They are in our backyards. And I wanted to really mention this because a lot of the great beauty that this report comes with is that a lot of the people that have access to it can somehow, modify their marketing strategies to tap into the right audience, can somehow shift their market strategies to tap into the right audience they're looking for based on what their marketplace is. But again, we have the non-resident foreigners, which is Melissa, who lives out of Dublin, and she works and lives in Dublin and wants to come buy something in Orlando. But we also have what we call the resident foreigners, which are those still considered international buyers who are recent immigrants. Okay, so they have been in the US for less than 2 years at the time of the purchase. So understanding those cultural nuances, what is their motivation? That is super key as well to make sure that you're tapping into the right audience.
Right. So great. So I think, what we're trying to kind of get across here is that, people come for a lot of different motivations. And Kimberly's going to talk later about understanding those. But I'm going to keep us moving because we have a lot of points that we want to hit upon. So I think we were going to just next share, where they buy, right? Like kind of the top 10 states. And some of them are a little surprising, some not. What I really want to get to is this, because we tend to take of those top 10 states, Alex, but fascinating to me when you were sharing some of those stories about what we call micro markets. Maybe you could
Mhm.
elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm sure like when we were talking about where international buyers are are buying, what are their inbound destinations when it comes to those buyers, we were all thinking about the usual suspects, right? Like Florida, Texas, California, and Arizona. Well, those are definitely top five, and you can find those on the report. But what a lot of times gets overlooked, and I will be sharing with Tammy and you all some links so you can access, is we also have a great resource called Local Market Case Assessments, in which we deep, extremely dive extremely deep into every single one of the states, and you would be shocked and very surprised of the amount of international activity that surrounds the real estate and building practice itself in every single one of the states. So these micro case studies that are shown on the screen basically are telling you great hints about different nationalities that are specifically focused on specific states that you would never put together unless you had this data,
Right.
these
Right.
statistics.
And we kind of had a duh moment, a Homer Simpson moment, I think, when we were talking about this, because we all went, right. Yeah, there was that community in Dallas where there was a chip manufacturer and they were bringing, it was like we all had a bunch of those stories, but we don't tend to codify that and understand that. And I don't want to steal Kimberly's thunder because she's taught me so much through prepping for this, but, really understanding that and being on the lookout for that. One, you can read the paper or, oh, that's old, isn't it? You can, follow the news and know what's coming into your market, but you also can just pay attention. Who are the prospects coming in the door? But we're going to save that for later. But I think that's a huge untapped opportunity. Also interesting was country of origin in terms of our international buyers and what's coming in the door. And I don't know that we would have all guessed these were the top 10 or we would have put them in this order. But fascinating here. And again, just punching that point that, half of these folks are actually already in the US and they're ready to
Yeah, and
make
we
that
have
move.
we have Melissa. That information is also broken down by state. So if some of our esteemed guests are in Texas or Kentucky, whatever they are, these specific reports will give you the origin and nationality of those buyers for that particular state, which, as you might imagine, varies by state.
Right, right. So really interesting and good to know your specific market down to that micro market level. Um, and I think, what I love about this slide is, we just took some personas and Neo was very kind to share, we anonymized them, we didn't share people's personal information, but really looking at, the nuance of these are real people and they have very interesting stories and backgrounds and they're well educated, they're well financed, of course, and they may be in Canada, they may be in Brazil, they may be in China, India, but very different nuance. And these are, highly capable people that are buying into our communities. So I think this really makes it real. So any parting comments, Alex, before we go into the kind of the fun
Well,
part,
I
the
think
Mythbusters?
I think something that's very important, and you were mentioning that, Melissa, is we gotta get used to uh, understanding that global also happens in your marketplace. So we have to do a much better job, and not only in the real estate industry, but I feel like in every industry that has to do with building and housing related needs, like understanding who lives on your market, identify all those like foreign owned companies that are relocating into your market, because a lot of the times what we find is that commercial leads to residential. So that's what we try to put in our members' heads. Like, do not discard the possibility to network with commercial practitioners in your marketplace, because they will eventually become your business partners, because they're selling these huge facilities to Swedish companies that the first thing those companies are going to do is transfer and relocate 200 Swedish people that have housing needs. So it's all full circle. So that's, I think, is the most important thing. Try to bridge, and I think we're doing a better job now of bridging commercial and residential.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. Now we're all much more educated about these international buyers. So we're going to switch over to Mythbusters section of our program. And we have our own Mythbusters. And I am so appreciative of our panelists who indulge me in my silly antics with slides. But they're going to walk us through. These are just the things that we've heard or we hear, or things that, builders really kind of are wrestling with, and try to give you some tips for dealing with that. So I'll read off kind of the myth, and then Kimberly's going to weigh in with, a perspective. And then Alex, you jump in as well if you've got something to add. So are you ready,
Melissa,
Kimberly? Yes.
Can I address one that was actually sent to us in the chat before we get started
Yes.
on these?
Yes.
I think, and it's very much the elephant in the room. So there is concern that the U.S. policies may be changing on immigration, and we've known this for a while, right? But there's always opportunity. So I think, to Alejandro's point, there's always opportunity here, regardless of what's going on in our political climate. And bringing international companies in and bringing in international talent is something that is something that everyone, even those who are trying to narrow down the focus of our government, they are still very excited about bringing in international talent. So,
Yes.
so saying, oh, this is not the right time, this is not the right political climate. I mean, who knows from minute to minute, honestly, what's happening. So what we do know, this is still going on. There's still a lot of opportunity for you here. Pay attention to what's right in front of you, because sometimes that's all we have control over. So there's my 2 cents. You like that?
Thank you. No, I do. And I appreciate the fact that you're watching the chat, because I wasn't watching the chat. So I appreciate that. And I think you're right. It's the elephant in the room. And it's like, I appreciate that candor, and we don't want to make this about politics or any of that. We'd be here for all the
No, because
whatever. Who
it's
needs that?
business. This is business. This is how to grow your business, and it happens no matter what.
Perfect. All right. Well, that's a good
And
warm up.
no, Melissa, one thing
Yes.
I was gonna mention, also, because I saw that on the chat. So Kimberly, thank you for calling that out. We do have statistics on Florida and the Miami markets in particular. So I'd be happy to share those links with you all, because we have a particular research report that only focuses on Florida. So we'll be more than happy to share that with whoever requests.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're warmed up now. So the first one that we tend to hear is international buyers can't get financing. What do you say to that, Kimberly?
I hear this one all the time, and the truth is, I mean, it's just not true. There are other avenues. There are alternate sources for financing. We know that money needs to be seasoned. It needs to be vetted as it comes in the United States. Although I learned the other day in our one of our prep calls about now a cryptocurrency offering that can help international buyers. So there are lots of options. And knowing that 50% are cash buyers. Now, I mean, we still have to source that cash, but many of these buyers will pool resources. You have to understand that a lot of international buyers are also multi-gen. So you will have multiple generations that are going together to buy a home, which I think really increases that cash pool, because oftentimes everybody kind of chips in on that purchase. So slow down, just talk to them. Have they looked at options when you're face to face with this buyer, and say, you know what? I can't say that I'm an expert on this either, but I know people who are. We're going to reach out. We're going to find some resources for you. Our National Association of Realtor Friends, our realtor friends, do have options for this. There are many of them who specialize in international buyers. I know many of the agents that I have trained do they fly over to other countries. They actually specifically go there and do these what we would call the home shows or the Southern Living shows, but they do them in these other countries. And all of those come with a variety of resources. Our realtor partners, I'm so glad that we have Alejandro on here from NAR, because NAR has tons of resources for this that we in the home builder world just haven't tapped into as much, but they're still there. They're still there for us. So thinking that your buyers can't get financed, I had a case the other day where we had some buyers happen to be coming from Vietnam. They owned nail salons. And so sourcing the cash was something that it took us a little longer because we had to move that money from Vietnam to bring it into the US and source it, but it was quite doable. It just took us a little bit longer to get them in the home, and they were particularly interested in an inventory home that was completed. We had to move them from that to a home that was still under construction but could be completed shortly, in order to give us time to actually make that happen. Everybody was still happy. The outcome was still good. And guess what? The builder not only sold that home to another family that was ready to go, but they got the other sale on one that wasn't quite ready, that they didn't have the carrying cost for. So don't give up. Just be curious. Just, there are resources out there, and it is not that international buyers cannot get financed. Totally not true.
Yeah.
And
excellent.
Kimberly, sorry, Kimberly, one thing that I was gonna add to that, and I appreciate you bringing that up, is that nowadays with technology and innovation in our space, there's so many different platforms which are specialized specifically in finding financing for foreign buyers who are willing to purchase in the United States. So definitely not gonna drop any names there, but definitely look into that option, because there's a good number of companies now that are extremely well suited from a technology standpoint, that with 5 clicks, they can profile a client, they can make sure that they have a wide variety of options. So definitely do not overlook that, because nowadays with technology and innovation, that is a great opportunity that's going to make financing much easier than it's been in the past, because I definitely see the hurdles that you're talking about too.
Yes, and
Great.
builders should find these resources for their salespeople, vet them for their salespeople, and let them know that it's available, because you don't know if your sales team is turning people away because it's, quote, too hard. Unless you're shopping your people every day, which I doubt anyone is, you don't know what business is coming in your door and turning around and walking back out the door because it's, quote, too hard. And if we have these resources, we educate, we train our teams on them, they will use them.
Great. Perfect. Okay. Well, that one, you ready for another one?
Let's go.
Okay. All right. I don't have multilingual salespeople, so don't want to encourage international sales because it's really hard and embarrassing when you can't speak their language.
So I'm a Southern girl from a small town called Etowah, Tennessee. We didn't have a whole lot of diversity in Etowah, Tennessee when I was growing up. And yes, we did talk like that. We do talk like this. When I'm there, I switch right back into it. Okay. So if this blonde Southern girl can communicate and learn to work with people of different nationalities simply by using my app on my phone, partnering with my realtor VIPs, working with and simply asking questions. Most international buyers are bilingual. My son and I were in Norway, and because of what we look like, the Norwegians just assumed that we were Norwegian. And so they would speak, Norwegian to us. And when we would look confused or we would say something, right mid-word, they would switch into English, into beautiful, fluent English. So particularly in our European countries, there's about 10 years of compulsory English that is taught, and most Europeans do speak English. Many other countries also teach a lot of English, and people who are looking at coming here try to learn. They do a much better job in other countries than we do, is what I'm trying to say. But even so, if you don't speak the language, we have technology, we have the power, we can do this, and try to, if they come in without someone to translate, which is so rare. I don't think I've ever had that where there wasn't someone, whether it was a child, a general real estate agent, someone who could help to facilitate that communication. So we're part of a globe. Like we're part of
Yeah.
a universe. We're not singular. There will
Mm-hmm.
be people who speak other languages, and that's okay. We can work through this, right? So
Very
again,
good.
just be open.
Yeah, I love that. And in fact, I'm fresh off of CES, and now they have amazing earbuds that are translation tools, right? That people
Right.
are using in construction, they're using in, all kinds of industries, but those are very advanced. So I think you really kind of nailed this one, Kimberly. All right, well, let's do another one. Um, my sales team does not understand cultural nuances.
Hey, man, welcome to the club. I'm not a genius or an expert on this. So I get it. I'm not either. I'm constantly learning. And again, great salespeople are curious salespeople. Motivation matters. And anybody who knows me knows I lead from my heart. Everything
Mm,
I do, you will see my heart in it. And so as I am engaging with my international neighbors, I'm asking them to share a bit of their culture with me. I'm asking questions. So, and with
mm,
any buyer, questions are always the answer. We as salespeople have gotten to the point where we just like to tell everything. And when we can't tell people stuff, we get very uncomfortable. And we really have to turn that on its ear. I mean, we came equipped with 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use them accordingly, right? So ask questions. You don't have to understand their cultural nuances because if you ask about them, ask about those expectations, ask how things are done when they purchased their last home in whatever country of origin they came from, or even how their family, now the familial pressure and familial culture carries over and it's
mm.
very real. So we know that, for instance, home orientation for many cultures is a very big deal. A lot of times that is religious based, but it could also be tradition based or based on what the family from back home is saying. So, that we need things to face north and east rather than south and west, for instance. Ask about that and say, tell me more about that. Tell me the why on that because as you know, here in the United States, that isn't something that we typically pay a lot of attention to when we are building. So if I understand it better, then I'm going to be best able to serve you and do the best with what we have here to make sure it meets the criteria that's really important to you.
Awesome.
Newsflash, that works for any buyer on any level with any question that they might have. Tell me more about that so I can do a better job for you.
I
Yeah,
like
pretty
I,
simple. Yeah.
like it says there too, to add to what Kimberly said, there's plenty of educational resources and tools that are available out there so that people get to know better what type of persona are they gonna have in front of them. So do that due diligence. That's very important because once you see one come through successfully, the beauty of international business, referrals are popping left and right. So once you get one client, word of mouth is gonna do it, and you're gonna see how important it is to start having things translated into different languages. Like you're gonna see how referral business is so important when it comes to international. It all comes to trust, especially when it comes to this type of buyer.
Yeah. Well, and I think
100%.
I think you really nailed it. It's like, to Kimberly's point, just like you do anyone walking in the door, understand them, ask questions, because we all have our nuances, regardless of international origin. And then I think that's really important. Once you start to notice it, you don't have to understand every culture in the world, but if you start to see several folks from India or several folks from China, and this is where that referral network comes in, then you can kind of study it a little more, right? It's worth putting a little effort in to go, oh, okay, well, that's something we can mine. So I'm going to keep us moving here and go on. We have another
Let
one
me
for
add,
us.
if I could
Oh,
add
yeah.
to that one too. So as it's so important with those cultural norms that you do understand them and give yourself a little bit of space when people are coming in, so that you're not immediately shaking hands. And in the South, we're raised, look people in the eye and look them directly, and nice firm strong handshake. Well, that might not be the appropriate way to go. So one of the things that I think is always the best practice is to get people out of your sales centers and into the kitchen of the home. That's
Mm,
going to give you, so you're not demonstrating, you're just simply getting people to where they're more comfortable, which is going to give you also a little bit of time to do some assessment to try to figure out, who should I be addressing? Should I shake hands? And of course, if someone reaches out to shake hands with you, shake their hand. But if they don't, then maybe that might not be the way to go. And maybe it's cultural, and maybe it's just they're a germaphobe, right? So it could be anything. But it's not about you. It's about what makes people comfortable, and getting them into the kitchen, offering them a beverage, and getting comfortable with people goes a very long way. With those referrals that Alejandro referenced, with those, you need to understand, set proper expectations as you go along, because one will tell another, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But that works in reverse when things go awry. So make sure
mm.
we're setting proper expectations. We're not getting too far out over our skis. We're only saying this is what's going to happen, and then after that we can expect to do this. And we're 1-2 things ahead every time. Make sure that buyer is with you every step of the way. Then set the next expectations and keep moving forward. Any salespeople listening to this, that's also called the assumptive close. So it gets us there, but it's because we set those proper expectations as we go, and we reiterate them as we go, because again, with translation, sometimes things do get lost in translation. So even though you've said it once or twice, you might need to say it 3, 4, 5 times to make sure that everybody's with you every step of the way. So sorry,
Awesome.
Melissa, a little
No,
tangent.
no, but it's kind of good common sense. We could kind of like just say this is just good selling practice, right? It
It is.
applies regardless. You're just reinforcing it. All right, so we have a few more we're going to cover. We're going to kind of punch through these fairly quickly so we can honor our time constraints. The next one is international buyers don't understand U.S. real estate, so it's extra work for my team.
And that really goes back to what I just said about setting those proper expectations, but also training your general real estate agents. Educate your general, which you should do anyway. I'm going to be talking about this in 2 weeks at the International Builder Show, setting those proper expectations with your general real estate partners, who are your outside sales force. So when they know what to expect, they can also help you with that buyer to understand what's coming. It is not extra work. It's the work our salespeople should be doing every single day with every single buyer. If you want that 10 on your survey, this is how you earn it, is by setting proper expectations and then following through.
And
Awesome.
one thing I'm gonna say about that, just because I've seen a few of the participants who are wonderful members of our organization, is with the network that we have. Believe me, we have as much knowledge as a buyer would want. So when a buyer is accompanied in a way by one of our agents, like the amount of expertise, the amount of knowledge is incredible, not only in the US, but also I see Alessandro from Italy and some others. Like, our members are ready to bring in those referrals to you guys and have in-depth expertise. So those buyers don't have to navigate this complex transaction on their own, but rather with somebody that's a complete subject matter expert. So that's very, very important too.
Great. All right, thank you. Okay, so this next one, I think we've hit this 100 times already, like in our webinar, but we're going to do it again. We don't have international buyers in my markets. I guess that might be true, but I think, what our panelists have told us that, yeah, probably do. And you're just not recognizing it, right?
I may go further and just say, you do. So even in little Etowah, Tennessee, we had international
It,
buyers, right? We had
it,
international people there. There are lots of things that are happening in your market. There are industries that are attracting
Yeah.
international buyers. There are all sorts of jobs, positions, careers, medical, technology, like the list goes on and on and on. And as builders, one of the markets that we have always wanted to tap into and have just done a terrible job with it are relo buyers. Relocation. This is a relo buyer. And in some cases, they're already there. They're already renting. They may not own yet, but they may be renting. My next door neighbor has rented 3 places since he moved here from India to find the right school and the right place. And now he feels very comfortable. He and his family feel quite comfortable that they have found the right school system, the right part of town that they want to be in. But they tried 2 or 3 others in the few years that they have been here in the United States. Lovely, lovely people. And they just, so they're renting right now, getting ready to buy. So, these people are in your communities. Take your blinders off because they are there.
and Kimberly, there is a reason, to your point, why some of the states that we would not think that they would do this are opening promotion agencies outside of the US in those markets that are attracting clients to their marketplaces. Like the fact that Indiana has opened a promotion agency in Seoul, South Korea, has nothing random about it. That's because the influx of people from South Korea that are attracted by their state is very large enough to justify opening an office. And like that, there's so many cases. The thing that I would say here, people have to do a much better job at researching local agencies, chambers of commerce. Those are the guys that are going to give them the best tips. Even more so, and this is something that I've learned from many of our members, if you go to an airport, just a random airport, just see which are the direct flights that are getting from outside of the US into your marketplace. That is a very easy yet extremely effective way to know who's coming into your marketplace.
Awesome. That's a great tip. I love that.
Yeah.
Not even
And they
in the
aren't
tip
always
section.
just the countries that you just mentioned too. So Rochester, New York, I have a client in Rochester, New York, and he does a great deal of business with the Nepalese people. And first of all, Rochester is a place where there's not a lot of people moving there, but those people who are moving there are coming because of business, because of these opportunities that are now presenting themselves in biotech. So biotech, it used to be the home of Kodak. And now Kodak is obviously not as big a presence in that community, and it was kind of a one-trick pony town. And now it's really starting to branch out, and their education, their biotech, their medical professions because of that, and now they're attracting a lot of international buyers. And I didn't see Rochester, New York anywhere on your list. It happens everywhere. So.
All right, good. All right, well, I'm going to wrap this up. Here's the last one, and then we're going to move on to a quick speed round of tips. International buyers just want luxury and condos.
No. So,
Do we need to say any more? No.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you have townhomes, so low maintenance is something that I do see as a very high preference. But one of my builders and actually 2 of my builders in the Charlotte, North Carolina region, they build single family homes, have a lot of buyers for those single family. Those buyers for the single family also purchase rentals for people that they know within the community. So it's a double whammy. It's a double purchase because they've got single fams and they have townhomes within those same communities, and both are supporting each other in those sales. So when you know that this is a buyer that you're attracting, this is, you start to pro forma your products, start to develop your products to hit that type of market.
Great. Perfect. All right. Well, we have just a few minutes here. So, I think we've hit most of our tips throughout our webinar, but we did list a few of them here. And I do want to share, we've got a lot of resources that Alex and Kimberly mentioned. If you want to email Tammy Smoot at Neo, she is happy to send you that list of links. And as we wrap up here, I just want to give, both Kimberly and Alex, maybe kind of what's your best last tip that you want to leave with our audience?
Alex,
Kimberly?
you want to start? Oh,
I'll let you go,
I'm
Kimberly.
I
I was
vote
just going to
Kimberly.
say, as always, we're in the relationship business.
Mhm.
And this is all about having the right relationships, having your general realtor network, your VIPs, making sure that by sitting down with them in advance, it's not just about one transaction. It's about having that relationship, talking to them, finding out who in their office may be the specialist from China, maybe the specialist from India, maybe the specialist from Nepal, wherever it happens to be, Brazil, wherever. So, if you sit down and you talk to your outside realtor partners, they are going to be able to strategize with you on ways that you can grow your business and how you can help expand through doing business with these particular international buyers that are coming into your community.
Great.
So, sort of along those lines, honestly, this is gonna sound very romantic, but I truly believe that this is not about homes. This is not about brick and mortar. This is about people.
Mm.
And when
Yes.
it comes to that, there is nothing that's as lucrative and as great a business as international market. We are lucky enough that as members of the National Association of Realtors, we have a huge network that you all can rely on. Again, relationships all over the world, all 6 continents, over 100 partners that have been vetted and conducted great due diligence on. So definitely rely on those as your partners in business. And another thing that I will say as a big tip, spend time, or I would say invest time understanding the specific nuances of your local marketplace. It's not gonna happen overnight, but once you understand who your persona is, who you're tapping into, which is the nationality or nationalities that you will have more chances of succeeding with, that's when the mindset and the actual revenue changes.
Great. Well, Alex, I couldn't have asked for a better closing in a way to bring it back to the heart and why we're all here and why we're in this industry. It is about creating homes for people, and it comes down to connecting with people. So I really appreciate this. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to the folks at NEO for having the idea and the vision to have this session. Really appreciated it. And I think we were able to kind of hit some key points. And again, thank you to the NEO team. Reach out to Tammy if you want those resource links. And if you've got any other questions or if you want to connect with any of us, feel free. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Right. Thank you.